Welcome to the Data Hall YouTube channel. In today's video, we are going to look into how do we visualize data in R. So in this video, we are going to look into the ggplot package. That is a package that is used mainly in R to make a visualization. So we are going to look into what are the basics of ggplot. And then we are going to make graphs for different types of data or different types of graphs. So we are going to make bar graph, bar chart, which is used for a single categorical variable, then histogram for numerical variable, box plot if we have a categorical and a numerical variable and we want to look into their relationship. Then we have scatter plot to look into the relationships of two numerical variable, and group or stack bar if we have two categorical variable. But first, we are going to start with the basics of ggplot. So, by the way, ggplot stands for grammar of graphics, right? So, at the end of this specific video, we would be able to make this kind of graph, although it isn't much of an advanced level graph, but it would, this is the basic knowledge that you would need to make the basic graphs. Okay, so first of all, this ggplot2 is the package that comes within the tidyverse. So if you install tidyverse or you install ggplot2, that is one in the same thing. But by installing tidyverse package, it is more beneficial because you install the other packages as well. So I would recommend going with tidyverse, install the tidyverse package and load the library. Okay, now we are going to look into the data set. So for this, we are going to use the built-in data, which is the mpg data. So we use the data function and specify the name of the data that we're going to look into. We have 234 observations and 11 variables. So if we view the data, there are different manufacturers of car, their models, their displacement. It is kind of a size of an engine, the year they were made, their cylinders, the transmission, the drive, whether it is a four-wheel drive, front drive or rear drive. So other variables like highway mileage per gallon or city mileage per gallon or the class of the car. So this is a data set that is related to cars, and we have continuous variable, we have numerical variables, and we also have categorical variables in them. Okay, so once we have loaded the data, the first thing is we use, although the package name is ggplot2, but the function that we use is called ggplot. So first we use the function ggplot, and within that function we use the parameter data, and we assign the data that we want to use for that specific graph. So the first thing that we need to give to ggplot is the data that we are going to use. So if we press enter, control enter, we get nothing. We just get a canvas, and it is an empty canvas, right? And the way it works is that this ggplot2 adds layers on this canvas, right? So the second thing, these two things are the things that we always need to specify when we are going to make a ggplot. The second thing is that we need to have a mapping argument, and within mapping argument, we are going to use the aesthetic function. So this is always going to be a static function within the mapping argument. You do not have to, remember this. You first need to assign the data and then use the aesthetic function. Now within the static function, we define the color of the graph, etc., right? So all the major things, the global things that are going to be defined is going to be defined within the aesthetics. So for the sake of simplicity, we are just going to define the x variable and the y variable. So in this case, we are going to use the displacement or the size of the engine as the x variable, and we are going to look into its impact on its highway mileage per gallon, right? So this is the variable. So if I press Control Enter, what we get is within that canvas, now we have specified the R have specified the y variable on y-axis and x variable on x-axis, but we do not have any graph over here because The thing is that we haven't specified what type of graph we want. So the next thing is we need to tell our what type of graph we want. So this is a new layer that we are going to add on to our canvas. Now remember, whenever you're going to add a new layer, you're going to use this plus sign. So this plus means that take this thing and add it above this layer, this canvas, or this layer of graph, right? Now, to specify what type of graph we want, we use geom, and there are different type of geometries, right? So if you just write geom underscore, you get all the type of geometries that are there. So we have bar chart, then we have box plot, then we have contour plots, right? The one that we are going to use over here is called geom point, and this is used for a scatter plot. So we just open and close the parenthesis. If I press Control Enter now, okay, so I misspell it. So if I press Control Enter now, we get the data of the displacement and the HWY variable, highway gallons, highway mileage, right? And we can see that there is a negative relationship, right? So as so as the displacement increases, the size of the engine increases, the highway mileage per gallon would decrease, and that makes sense. Now, one thing to remember is that you need to use this plus sign at the end of the previous line. So if instead of this way you have written it over here, then that would not add the layer in that. I mean, we still have this empty canvas and it is ignoring this chunk of code. So you have to have this plus over here, right? Obviously, you can continue on typing this line of code over here, but for the sake of readability, we have it on a next line. So for now, what we have understood is we have data, we have mapping, and then we have added a layer of geom points, geometry points over our canvas. Now, the next thing is that you see how we are defining the parameters and naming the parameters, right? But as with the other functions of tidyverse, what we can do is instead of typing data equal to mpg, we can simply write mpg, and we know that the first argument is the data. So R would know that this mpg is the data and the second argument is mapping. So R would know that this specific chunk of code is related to mapping. So we do not need to specify the data and the mapping each time. So that makes it easy to work with the code. And if we press Control Enter, we get the exact same graph. The second thing is that instead of having mpg as the data as the first argument of ggplot, we can get the data and pipe that into ggplot as the pipe operator from the tidyverse would work. So we take the mpg data, use the pipe operator. This would come with Control Shift M. Sorry. Okay, and now we haven't specified mpg, the data over here, right, as the first argument of ggplot, because we are already piping that into ggplot. And whenever you pipe any data into the object or a function, then that function would consider this data as the first argument, right? So this again would give us the exact same graph. Now, this is the basic graph, and there are many variables that we can add layers onto them, or we can get the information into this graph. So for example, we have this drive variable, right? It have three categories. The first one is whether the car is front wheel drive, four wheel drive, or a rear wheel drive. So what we want is we want these points to be colored based on the drive. So within this aesthetic function, remember aesthetic is used to define different aesthetics of the graph. So we have this argument color, and within that we specify this drv, which is the drive of the car, right? And when we do that, what R would do is it would assign specific color to each category, right? So all the points would be colored based on their category. So these green points are the front wheel drive, these blue points are the rear wheel drive, and the orange points are the four-wheel drive. Now, these colors are somewhat difficult to look into, right? I mean, we can clearly, it might be difficult to distinguish between green and blue over here, right? So one way to work with these graph is to also have shapes as well. So again, it's easy to understand. We specify within the aesthetics, we specify shape and assign the category of the categorical variable on which we want the shapes to be changed. So if I would press Ctrl Enter, now it have assigned a different color because we have specified the color argument, and different shape because we have specified a shape argument. Now the category can be different in each argument. So for example, I can have colors based on drive, but I can have shapes based on, let's just say model of the car or class of the car, right? So we can use a lot of categorical variables and display it over here in the graph. But for the sake of simplicity, and for the sake of clarity, I'm using the same variable, right? So now we can clearly see that these triangles are the front wheel drive, these squares are the rear wheel drive, and etc. etc. Okay. Now let me do one more thing. There is an issue with shapes, right? There is a variable called class, and if I can show you the category of class, right? So if we do mpg class, we have around 7 categories, right? These are the different classes of cars. So these are compact car, pickup cars, SUV cars, etc. etc. Now instead of drive, where we just have 3 categories, in class we have 7 categories. So I want to make a graph based on class, and when I do that, you would see a warning message. It isn't an error, it is a warning message, and it says that the maximum number of shapes that R can assign is 6, and we have 7 categories. So it would omit, it would not assign a shape to one of the categories, that is SUV, because now if you want to have more categories, if your categorical variable do have more categories, that is fine, but you would have to manually define these shapes, right? So just to give you an idea, if you are working and you get this warning message, you need to understand that this is the issue. Now this was a categorical variable. What if we have a continuous variable and we assign color based on that continuous variable, right? So color of a continuous variable, and we have over here is a variable called cylinder that contains around 4 or 5 values, right? But these are all numerical values. So the code is exactly the same, but what I have done is within this color argument, I have specified this cylinder variable. And I just want to demonstrate a thing related to ggplot. Now you can see that instead of having all those shapes and categories over here, and obviously we cannot assign shapes to the continuous variable in the scatter plot, you can see that it has assigned a different kind of a legend and a different way of demonstrating that graph, and that is quite amazing about ggplot. It can understand what kind of data it is, and it can present the data in the best suitable way. Okay, so let's add more layers. Now this graph is fine. Let me go back to my graph. This is the graph that we were working with. Now this graph is fine. This is the scatter plot, but we cannot make sense of the relationship, right? We need a line over here that would give us the sense of the relationship. And for that, we need to add a new layer, and you have guessed it correctly. If we want to add a new layer, we we would have to use the plus sign. So we use the plus sign with our previous code. Our code ended at geom point. So we use plus sign and add a new layer, and this layer is now a new geometry point or new layer, and that is geom smooth. And this geom smooth is used to depict the relationship using a line, right? If I press Control Enter, now you would get now this isn't exactly the thing that I showed you at the start of the video. We are getting 3 different lines for 3 different categories of drive, right? And we are also getting this gray area. Now this gray area is the standard error around here. And why are we having these 3 different lines? The reason is that we have we have defined the color in the global setting. Now remember, when you write the ggplot function, and within that, if you define a static, that aesthetic will be applied to all the sub layers that you define. So and consider this as a global setting and a local setting. So if instead of defining this aesthetic, this color and shape aesthetic within the ggplot main function, if you have defined them in the sub layers, then that color or that shape argument would just work with that specific layer. But because we have specified them in the main ggplot function, now the subsequent all layers would adapt those functions within them. So what I do, the second thing is that we would come back to this later on. The second thing is that we are getting these smooth lines instead of a linear line, and we are having these confidence intervals which we want to remove. Now, if you define the geom point without any parameters, without any arguments, it is giving us also a message over here which says that the method is loose and the formula is something like this. If we want to have a linear line, then we would have to define the method argument as lm. That means that we want a linear line instead of a smooth line. And the second argument I'm using is s is equal to false, so we don't want the standard errors, right? So if I press Control Enter, we have solved the first issue, and now we have the linear lines. The second thing was related to the global, all the local settings. So what I have done is I have taken this color and shape arguments from this global setting, right? And I have pasted that within the aesthetics of this geom point, right? And now we would have different color and shapes for the points, but not different color and shapes for the lines. So now you might get the idea. Okay, so I haven't defined the method over here. Let me copy paste this line of code. Okay. So now you can get the idea that because these statics are defined within this geom point layer, it just works with this geom point layer. And within geom smooth layer, we haven't specified these statics, so it wouldn't work on them. But if we had specified them in the global setting, then they would apply to all the subsequent layers that we define. This is the same code that I have written over there. Okay. Next thing is that obviously we do not find this HWY quite descriptive, or this displacement or the drive or for FR to be more descriptive. So what we want is we want to change them. Now, if you want to change the labels, you would use the labs function. And again, this is a new layer. So we'd have to use the plus sign. We are going to define the title. This is engine displacement on highway mileage. We can also have a subtitle. The description of the x variable on the x-axis and the y variable. And over here we have these colors and shapes. And why do we need all these need to define the color and shape as well. I am going to discuss that as well. And then we have this caption. So let me just first go through this so you get the idea. So we have defined the y-axis, x-axis, we have the caption over here, we have, okay, I have misspelled that. So let me press Ctrl Enter again. So we have the subtitle over here, and we have defined this, this legend heading, right? Now the thing is that we had colors and we had shapes. So if I do not define shape, right, if I leave that over there, you would get a different legend for the shapes and a different legend for the color. Or if even I defined the shapes but I gave it a different heading, then again we would have a different legend for shapes and color. So you need to have the same legend for the color and the shape, right? Next, if just say if you do not want a specific legend to appear, let's just say we do not want this y-axis to have any label over here. What we are going to do is we are going to write null, right? And that will remove that specific label. So you can do that with anything. Okay. Next is that these legends are not quite descriptive. So what we want is we want to use a new layer, again a plus sign. So this time, so working with these legends are somewhat difficult. So we are going to use the scale color discrete function, and we are going to define the labels, concatenate, and then we are going to specify the value of that label and assign it a descriptive value that we want. So for would become for wheel, F would become front wheel, and R would become rear wheel. And okay, this is how it would look like. But again, we have created that issue because we have defined the scale color discrete, but we haven't defined the shape discrete. So one way of doing this, although it isn't a recommended way, but I would give you a more easier way for this, is to use a scale shape discrete, and that way instead of having two legends you would have just one. But this again is a quite lengthy way of working with this. A more better way would be to use the MPG data. I'm going to use the mutate function and use the variable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to recode, change the values of this drv variable. So currently this drv variable contains f, for, and r. So instead of having f, I want to have for wheel. Instead of having f, I want to have front wheel, and so on and so on forth. So what I'm going to use is the recode function and redefine that variable. That way, now our variable would have a more descriptive values. Our data would have more descriptive values. And instead of using this scale color discrete or scale shape discrete, I'm just going to use my graph. And because we have changed the values within the data, I do not have to worry about that. So that is a more easy way of working with the graph. The second thing is that we can also change the position of these legends. So again, we would have a plus sign and change. So we use the theme function and we specify the legend position argument. We can have top, bottom, or left or right. So we have that on top. Now we can also work with themes. So this is the basic theme of R. But we have multiple themes, so I add this plus sign and we can change the theme. But if you write theme, you would have a bunch of options to work with. We have theme base, theme black and white, theme classic. You can play with these themes and see which one works for you. I'm just going to show you how this works. But the default themes are quite limited. What you can do is you can install this GG themes package. I have already installed it. I am just going to load it. And this GG theme package gives you a lot of options regarding theme. So if I can show you now, we have multiple options. So for example, we have this Excel option, economist option. So this would look like the ones that are published in the economics magazine. We can also have this Stata. If you have worked with Stata and you like the way they show their graph, we can get that as well. So explore the GG themes and look into the themes that they have. Now there are some other functions. I will just quickly go through them. We have this facet wrap, which divides the graph into categories. Now, for example, so what we do is we write the facet wrap and we specify the categorical variable on the basis of which we want to divide the graph. So we have the same line graph, but we are dividing them on the basis of cylinder. So we have a graph for a 4-cylinder, 5-cylinder, 6 and 8, although it doesn't look quite pretty, but anyways, we need to understand the function. We can flip the graph, but for that, I would have to use the bar graph. Now more on bar graph in our next video, but just have a look at this this coordinates flip function, and what this would do is it would flip the graph. Now for the line chart or the scatter plot, it wouldn't make sense, but for bar chart this can be a handy tool. Now lastly, there are cheat sheets, right? Now within this help menu, there are multiple cheat sheets, and one of them is related to data visualization with ggplot. If you open that cheat sheet, it would give you a idea of how this ggplot would work and what are the different functions. So we have statics and what are the different ways these statics would work. We have shape. We can also work with size. Right, so this is something that would help you if you are going to work with visualization. So I hope that was useful. So what we're going to do is in our next video, we are going to look into these different types of graphs. So stay tuned to the channel, do subscribe to this channel and do hit the bell icon.